9 in 10 News Focus, brought to you by Northern Michigan Digital, providing solutions for your digital advertising needs. Let Northern Michigan Digital help you cut through the noise in the digital market space. Here's your host, Kevin Essebaggers.
Welcome and thank you for listening to 9 in 10 News Focus. Northern Michigan is a retirement destination. Many people work their entire lives in order to one day move north and live the good life. And we have an aging population. And there comes a time when many will need extra care as we age. While often the focus is on the well-being of seniors, there's also a growing concern for the well-being of those taking care of an aging relative. Something called caregiver fatigue or caregiver burnout is real, and it is the subject of a book by Generations expert and gerontologist Jennifer Fitzpatrick. The book is called Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. In it, she explains that while people step up to help their parents in older age out of love or obligation, they can often do so at the expense of their own health. Let's bring in Jennifer Fitzpatrick. And first, I just want to know how you define caregiver burnout.
Caregiver burnout can be a lot of different things depending on the person. So for some people, it manifests itself physically. So you start having more headaches or stomach aches, or you might have flare-ups if you have arthritis or back pain or something like that. For other people, it manifests psychologically, that if you have a history maybe with, say, depressive symptoms or anxiety, and maybe that's been under control for a while, for a lot of people, those symptoms start to recur, even if you've sought treatment. Other people still, you might have spiritual implications, spiritual symptoms. Maybe if you're a spiritual person or a religious person, you might be angry with God, or you're neglecting prayer or going to services. So it's different for every person, but burnout basically means that your whole life is caregiving and you need to take a step back.
So how do you know when it's time to address this? How do you know when you've had enough, you've reached some sort of limit, and what can you do to back up from the situation and try to find your own life again?
Well, it's not a popular saying, but when people who care about you start telling you that you don't look right, or you don't seem like yourself, or they don't see you anymore. Now, again, Kevin, I'm saying people that care about you, not that nosy neighbor that maybe just gossips, but somebody that really loves you or really cares about you says, gosh, you don't seem like yourself. You seem exhausted. You don't look right. Most of the time, it's somebody else that's going to point it out to you. Most of the time, it's not you that notices it. So it's a friend, it's a neighbor, it could be your spouse. And sometimes still, it's your doctor. They might point out that maybe you have some symptoms that they're noticing. So it really, a lot of it is that someone else is pointing it out to you. And many of us, we just take on too much when we have a loved one who needs help. And so we don't necessarily identify that we're burnout.
And really, guilt plays a big role in this, doesn't it? I mean, taking care of a loved one, you feel guilty if you're not taking care of them, and you can push yourself so hard that it does jeopardize your mental well-being, right?
Absolutely. So guilt is one of those areas. So I say to folks when they say, oh, I feel guilty. Now, if you know that your dad has Alzheimer's and you're leaving him alone all day and he's wandering the streets, that's something to feel guilty about. Or maybe your loved one needs medicine and you're not picking it up for them. Maybe that's something you feel guilty about, or you're not feeding them and they're hungry. But if you're taking an hour for yourself once a week, or if you're setting boundaries, say, for example, you're saying, you know what, I am willing to be a caregiver. I can help, whether it be financially, whether I can take my loved one to the doctor. But you know what, I'm not moving mom in. I don't think that would be good for my family. I don't think that would be good for my marriage. That's nothing to feel guilty about. The other thing I think people feel guilty about is when they start looking at what would assisted living or home care costs. If you want to help your loved one, a lot of times people feel guilty about money. Oh, I wish I could, just give you an example. When my grandma was really sick, my whole family, about 11 of us, we said everybody over 30 is going to contribute financially, grandkids and adult children. Everyone's going to contribute financially to home care aid. And we all said, here's what we can afford. And I know that there were people in my family that said, gosh, I should be giving more. And I said, don't feel guilty. You have to pay your bills. You have to take care of your family, your life. Give what you can afford. And if you're doing what you can, but you're still setting boundaries, there's never a reason to feel guilty. And if you do, seek a caregiver support group, talk to a counselor, or maybe just talk to a friend who's going to support your decisions.
And if I'm someone who cares for someone who is caring for maybe an aging parent, and I notice, as you said, it's usually someone who cares about you, who will notice a change in you, and I want to say something, is there something, are there right things and wrong things to say? Is there a way to help them, and is there a way to make the situation worse?
Give them permission. Give them, a lot of times people who are really struggling with caregiver, I call it caregiver martyr syndrome, when they're sort of martyring themselves and their lives for caregiving. Give them permission. Say, you don't have to do everything. You have every right to exercise. You have every right to see a movie once in a while. You have every right to, go on business trips if you have to. I think a lot of people who find themselves in burnout and find themselves struggling with guilt and martyr syndrome, they need someone to let them off the hook and say, you know what, you're doing enough. You're doing enough. Because probably the tape that's going through their head all the time is, I could be doing more. And it's not good for your loved one if you're doing too much. It's not good for you. The other thing that I think is helpful, and say like it's a spouse. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend. Talk about how it's impacting you. So say you have a husband or a wife who is giving so much time and energy to their father, for example. Talk to them about, hey, look, the kids miss you. The kids wish you were around. You've missed doctor's appointments for the kids, or I've been the one that has gone to all their soccer games lately, and they would really love to see you there once in a while. Or, you know what, we haven't had a date night in 6 months. What can we do about that? I think it's fair to tell them how it's impacting you. The person who needs care is important. They are. But so is everybody else in the family.
And obviously, someone in this situation could be helped out by maybe, picking up a copy of your book. What other resources are out there for people in this situation to help them?
Oh, great. Absolutely. So first thing I always say to folks, if you're in a caregiving situation, go to n4a.org. So N as in Nancy, the number 4, A as in Apple.org. Plug in your zip code, and that directs you to your local area agency on aging. And that's a launching point. They're not going to have all the answers, but every county or city in the country has one of these, and that's a starting point. So you get to know somebody there and say, look, this is my situation, my mom or my husband or whoever it is, this is the issues that we're facing. What kinds of things do you recommend? So they're going to probably tell you about support groups. They might say, okay, well, we have programs, maybe Meals on Wheels, maybe there's, if you want a list of home care agencies that are certified in your area, if you want a list of assisted livings. The other place that I say that everyone should go is if your loved one has a condition, and most older adults, if you have to caregive for them, they are, say they have dementia, go to the Alzheimer's Association, make a friend there, and the 800 number there is 800-272-3900, 800-272-3900. That works all over the country. And just explain the situation. But if your loved one has, say, heart disease, go to the American Heart Association, make a friend there. Say, hey, what kind of programs and services do you have that can support me in the community? And it might be that they have education. It might be that they have support groups. It might be, believe it or not, sometimes they even have respite programs. And again, same thing, cancer, arthritis, pretty much every condition that somebody could be facing, there is a nonprofit that helps to support caregivers.
So caregivers are not alone in this. They just maybe need to do a little bit of digging to find the right resource to help them.
And that's what's so hard is I think caregivers feel alone. They're not alone, but they feel alone. So what we can do as friends and family, if you see a caregiver struggling, you do that. Do the research, because they're probably so busy with the day-to-day, getting the person to the doctor, getting the person, if they need help in the bathroom or dressed or picking up prescriptions. if you notice that they're struggling, that might be something that you can do. So say they're taking care of someone who has cancer. Call the American Cancer Society. Hey, what are the programs and services you have in our area? Call the Area Agency on Aging. Say, I'm worried about my friend. I'm worried about my spouse. What kinds of things do you recommend? So, and again, there's services and support for every budget. And Kevin, when you have more money, it can be a little easier because you have more options. But if you don't have a lot of money, there still are services out there that can help you.
This is all great information. You're obviously a passionate advocate for seniors. How did you get into this area?
Well, I just turned 45, and I worked in a nursing home when I was 16. And so I pretty much have spent the majority of my career in some aspect of working with or on behalf of older adults. So I've most of my life I've been in this field, and I was never afraid to, when the job at the nursing home came up, I wasn't afraid of it. And I think one of the reasons is because I had these wonderful grandparents that were, honestly, they were some of my best friends. I mean, they were my grandparents, but they were my friends too. And so I always just enjoyed older adults. So that's I've been at it quite a while.
It sounds like it. And you've shared what you've learned over the years in your book, Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. Thank you for taking the time.
And if anybody would like to grab a free chapter, just go to cruisingthroughcaregiving.com. You can read the first chapter for free.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Kevin.
Joe Busick helps produce the podcast. Thanks to him as well. And thank you for listening to 9 in 10 News Focus. I hope you join me again as we look at issues in the news affecting Northern Michigan.
9 in 10 News Focus, brought to you by Northern Michigan Digital, helping you meet your digital marketing needs.